Hello, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound, and healthy. And let us talk about the US elections. Suffice it to say, it's no surprise to the rest of the world that Trump won. I don't even understand why the Americans are surprised, but then I do, because as I've always talked about the delusions under which Americans and Europeans live, the number one delusion being that they actually think that they have the freedom of choice, that they have the freedom of democracy, that they actually have a sovereign state. Now, remember, this is something that I've constantly spoken about, the massive scale of delusion that the Americans and the Europeans have, that they live in a free world. The biggest delusion that they have that America is the richest country in the world, trillions in debt, but the richest country in the world. The delusion that America is a superpower. They seem to forget China for some odd reason. But okay, America's a superpower. The delusion that America is the leader of the free world, as I've already, time and again, repeatedly asked this question: how can a country that is itself not completely free be the leader of the free world? Especially when that country was literally given the job by its colonial master, its original colonial master, the UK, given this job, delegated this job of controlling all other former colonies to ensure that they are not completely allowed to be free, just like how the American country, the nation, is not allowed to be completely free. The fact that the people are still unaware of the fact that there is indeed a kind of a deep state in America. It's true that the word was coined by the Turkish and that the original definition doesn't match, but at the same time, basically it kind of does. The fact that there is, in fact, a machinery, an establishment that allows its people to believe that they have the freedom of choice, that they have democracy, that they have power, despite the fact that time and again they have actually proved to the people that they have no such things. Let's start with the Vietnam War. Again, I'll repeat myself time and again. Let's talk about the Wall Street protest. Let's talk about the interference in Korea, then the resulting alliance with South Korea, the opposition towards North Korea, the division, between the two Koreas. Let us talk about the interference in Bangladesh, or should we say the interference in Pakistan, Let's talk about Iraq. Let's talk about Syria. Let's talk about Libya. Let's talk about Iran. Let's talk about Egypt. Let's talk about half the world that has faced problems, that has constantly been in eternal crisis thanks to the American hands. Let's talk about the Kool-Aid that the Americans have been drinking every single time they're fed a narrative, like the WMDs in Iraq, like the 9/11 charade. Every time they were fed a false narrative, and the government used that to commit crimes against humanity all over the world. And it's so convenient how the American public, the European public, always seems to wake up after the fact and then, stage a protest. And then, have you actually ever formally apologized to the Muslims? No. Have you ever officially, formally condemned the Jews for the genocide, the repeated ongoing genocide of almost a century's worth in Palestine? The fact that you are funding them, the fact that actually your government is behind it all, again at the behest of the UK government, the UK establishment. Did it ever occur to you? You are sitting crying about Trump. When Trump first came, what the world said. Do you even remember what the world said about it? That finally God has listened to us. And we see karma in the form of Trump. Heck, even your best friends, the Indians, they were the first ones to say that, oh, finally, America is getting it. Finally, we're seeing karma. I'll say it again. The second time Trump is being brought is again a sign of karma. Because what have you been doing for the past 4 years? Increasing the scale of genocide committed in Palestine. Where were you all for the past 4 years? Sitting cozily in your rooms, celebrating Christmas, Hanukkah, and the likes, whining about your daily life issues, while just conveniently closing your eyes to Palestine. You suddenly decided to wake up, less than a year ago? Suddenly you remembered the rights of the Palestinian kids and the people? For almost a century, you were backing the Israelis. For almost a century, you've been, repeatedly spreading the narrative about how the Jews are the victims. Amazing how, in your eyes, the occupiers, but then not again amazing, because this is something I've also said before. The reason why the Americans and the Europeans have always sided with the perpetrators is because they are themselves perpetrators. You have always been on the wrong side of history throughout World War I, World War II. You have always been on the wrong side of history. World War III already started when you created a rift between the Gulf states and you had the Gulf War going. That was your first valid attempt on World War III. This genocide in Palestine, this is you working your asses off to ensure a third world war actually erupts fully on an official scale so that you can once again gain control over the world and its resources. Because suddenly stealing all these resources backhandedly is getting a bit too tedious. It's about time now that you put your plan into action. This 2025 plan that the Americans are talking about, which they're saying is Trump's plan, this is actually the American establishment's plan. Every time they deviate from this plan, they create a crisis within or outside of the United States. The fact that Kennedy was murdered, and the whole world knows that it was because he was going up against the business and the Jewish, essentially, lobbies, against infiltration of these lobbies within politics. He was killed by them because they are essentially what make up the American establishment, or you could say they are essentially the owners of the American establishment. The American establishment is like their own personal private army. President Obama, remember all the promises he made? How many of those promises did he keep? He was supposed to pull out of Afghanistan, did he? During his time, the number of attacks on innocent civilians in Pakistan was at its highest through drones. During his time, all the promises that he made to ensure world peace, not a single one of them could be fulfilled. Even the works that he did on a domestic level, on a national level for the Americans, he had to fight hard. And as you could see, as soon as Trump came, he dismantled most of those works, like the Obamacare and all that. Why? Establishment, the American machinery, which some people actually have the naivety to think that, oh no, the American establishment is not that powerful. Oh, it is still very much powerful. The fact that they have put you under this delusion shows its power. And it has repeatedly, as I said, whenever a crucial time occurs, it proves to you that it has power. The way it has snubbed the public. Even now, what did it do when the public decided to wake up and protest against Israel, protest for Palestine? What happened to the Harvard students, the professors? Harvard University, which at one point was always associated somehow or the other with the American bureaucracy, the elites, somehow you kind of always felt that people who came out of Harvard automatically were made part of the machinery that is the American government and establishment. But suddenly, the students of Harvard, the professors of Harvard, what was done to them by the state, by the American state? Trump is once again karma. The fact that America went all out in its interference with Pakistan's government, the fact that it installed mercenaries, traitors, criminals, while ousting our legitimate government. The fact that even though that legitimate government again won the elections overwhelmingly, but those elections, after the results came out, after they won and everything, they were still hijacked by the American planted traitors. And so Trump becomes your president. There is a saying, what goes around comes around. Whatever you do to others will come back to you. So when you sit and wonder why, for the second time, Trump has come, think about what your governments have been doing to other countries. And you know what? It doesn't matter if Trump came or Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris would have been Obama Part 2. That huge disappointment that you had during Obama's tenure, where he failed to keep his promises. Well, unlike him, Kamala Harris didn't make those kind of promises, especially with regards to Palestine. She made the opposite kind of a promise. She stuck with the Jewish lobby that was backing her, or she was hoping that they would continue to back her. But strangely, you know what? Trump did the same too. If you look at his campaign speeches, he was also pro-Jewish, pro-Israeli. They were both literally fighting to get the attention of the Jewish lobby. That was pathetic. It's strange that you people didn't see that. While we, sitting all the way across on the other side of the globe, noticed just that. The fact that the two of them were vying for the Jewish lobby attention. You make me president, I will give you everything to continue to commit genocide in Palestine. That is basically what the both of them were saying. But funnily, what does Trump do when he comes? He suddenly makes a U-turn sort of speech where he says, you know what, I think everybody has the right to protest, and I don't think we should stop it or try to trample upon their protests. It is their democratic right. Ooh. So now people are thinking, oh, the Jewish lobby that finally put him there will now turn against him because he has betrayed them. He's gone rogue again. Remember, Trump, I've always referred to Trump as the mouthpiece of the establishment that went rogue. Let's see what he does this time. Now, Kamala Harris, let me tell you one thing. She would never have gone rogue. The first thing she would have done was what her Indian counterpart in the UK, the Indian Prime Minister of the UK, what he did. She would have gone full on Zionist. And she would have pushed even more boldly for the genocide. She would have pushed forward even more boldly. All the economy, yes, on that point it is true. Your economy will continue to be drained towards the genocide. But if you think that Trump is going to stop that, I don't know. Can he afford to go any more rogue than he already has? I'm thinking Trump is going to behave himself this time. After all, he needs this term. He needs to complete this term. But as I said, where the world is concerned, it doesn't matter who comes. Biden was a criminal, but you accepted him, it seems. Trump, a criminal. Kamala Harris, for a mixed ethnic background, she sure is very racist. Otherwise, why else would she be pro-Israel and pro-genocide? As a woman, as a half-black woman, or, okay, sorry, a half-Jamaican, half-Indian woman, a woman. And she's pushing for genocide. We all know what Trump is. So, I mean, you already all know what he is. But the question is, what is she? So, as I said, the world actually is more wide awake, and what to them is so obvious. It seems that the American people still are unwilling to get out of that delusion. It doesn't matter who comes. America's screwed anyway. Why? Because America has been screwing with the rest of the world. America and Israel have been committing crimes against humanity for years, for decades. You may sit and think that America is all about progress and it's all about human rights, and it's, again, delusions. As you have seen with Black Lives Matter, as you've seen during the Vietnam War protests, as you've seen during the protests right now against genocide. I think it's about time you open your eyes up. And yes, in any case, as I said, I think Trump is just, once again, karma. Trump was thrown at you when you were wreaking havoc all over the world then. And now Trump is thrown back at you when you're wreaking havoc all over the world right now, messing with the United Nations, messing with the Middle Eastern countries, trying to threaten Iran, trying to threaten all the Muslim countries, who are trying to stop the genocide in Palestine, killing civilians in Lebanon, killing civilians in Syria, trying to kill the former Prime Minister of Pakistan twice. Ousting him wasn't enough. Working towards war. That's what your government's doing. It has always been doing. And the fact that you people are still not coming out of that delusion, your country's not free. You are not free. You do not have power. And it has time and again been showed to you that you are only allowed to throw tantrums, enough to just fool yourselves and the rest of the world. But when it comes down to it, your government is going to do what it has to do, what is in its agenda. And if any president fails to fulfill that, he will be removed and another one will be placed accordingly. You have not yet had a single president that has actually gone against your state. And I'm talking about your establishment, the inner workings, the machinery. They were either controlled or they were killed. But not a single one has come without the permission of your establishment. So, what do you think you're doing? You think your president is so powerful? It's not your president, it's the machinery behind him. But right now, Trump is trying to state that he is no longer part of that machinery, and he's trying to go rogue again, I guess, or he's trying to say that he never will be part of them. I don't know. As I said to the rest of the world, America is still and always will be the dawn of the global mafia, a threat to world peace. And the amount of curses that the world has hurled upon America in despair, in misery, in desperation, that sort of gets listened to in the form of Trump. That, oh yeah, finally, God has listened to the world's curses. Finally, America is getting its karma. That's basically what the world thinks every time somebody like Trump comes. It's as simple as that, really, for the world, you know? So, there you have it at the end of the day. This is me signing out. Khuda Hafiz.